Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we are actually now going
Amen.
back to another commentator, Torah Temimah. If you want to check the Rashis on Parshat Akev, you'll find them on my site on YouTube, and you'll find all the Rashis on Parshat Akev that we did together. So here we are back doing something called Torah Temimah. And in Genesis, we're going from the beginning. We started from the beginning, and at this point, we're at chapter 18, and it's dealing with Abraham encountering God regarding the destruction of the 5 cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. And God has revealed to Abraham that he is about to destroy these cities because of the degree of wickedness that they showed. And in previous sessions, through Torah Temimah and the rabbinic tradition, we had gone into some specifics as to the level of wickedness they had. Let me say that the level of wickedness was such that if they found someone acting in a charitable way to someone, they would torture that person desperately. It was awful, just the torture they would subject them to. I will not give you the details here. You can go to a previous session where we read about it. And we're now in the midst of where Abraham is responding to God, which is over here, right? Starts here on verse 23. We did these verses and the Torah Temimah on them. Vayigash Avraham v'yomar, Abraham went over, he drew near to God, in other words, and he said, Ha'af tispeh tzalikim rasha, shall you bring to an end the righteous along with the wicked? Perhaps there are 50 righteous people in the city. And we need to understand this. Rashi explains this. The reason for 50 is how many cities were there? There were 5. So if you divide 50 by 5, you get 10 people in each city. So the number that, even though it's stated the way it is here in the Torah, we're to understand that he is talking about a minimum here of 10 people in each city. Now, a lot of people think, and he eventually gets down to the number 10, which means 2 people in each city. Some people think that's the basis on which we have a minyan. That is not the source for this. That source is from Parashat Shlach Lecha, where God refers to, and he actually says a wicked congregation, but he uses the term congregation referring to the 10 spies who felt that they would not succeed in entering the land of Israel and convinced the rest of the Israelites that their mission was of no sense whatsoever, so that they gave up. So there, because the word Adah, and the word Adah means congregation, that's why that is the locus classicus for the minyan, not this place here, although a lot of people think that it is here. And of course, it is ironic that in that particular context, that community is called, or that congregation is referred to as a wicked congregation. And perhaps there's a deeper lesson there, that the fact that in having a minyan, there's some level of protection in the fact that 10 people have come together to pray before God in a minyan, and that good morning, and that they come together like that. Yes, Judith, please. Thank you.
Yeah, isn't that a sad way to figure out the count of minyan?
You mean the reference to the wicked? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. The reason is it's more of a technical issue because of the word Adah. That is the word, and because that word Adah is being used, that's why it's understood that that is the smallest number that is referred to as an Adah. So, as I said, I tried to take that context and give it a deeper meaning to say that in some ways it's saying that even if the people who make up that Adam are not exactly perfect, and we're going to get into that possibly a little later in our session today, it doesn't matter. It's still a worthy effort. I'm not sure that I'm answering your question in entirety, but I really understand it more as a technical term, that we want to define the word Adah, community. and the smallest number that's a community is 10 people. If you want to respond again, Judith, I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's sad. I think of a minyan
Yes.
and an Ada as an important thing, and here you have this negative.
Well, only because, okay, but the point is this. He had to say Rasha. He had to say about this community that it was Rasha in the book of Numbers. And had it not said Rasha, we'd have to assume that Ada was essentially righteous. Otherwise, it wouldn't have to use that word.
Okay.
Keep pushing me, Judith, and maybe I'll come up with a good answer, okay?
Well, I guess,
Yeah.
I've always wanted it to be where, Abraham, what she would say, a good version of Jews down God,
Right.
and says,
Yeah.
you know,
I think that's
be,
why a lot of people think this is the locus, but it isn't. And my responsibility is to take whatever knowledge I do have, such as it is, and be transparent with you, which I've tried to be.
yeah.
And then it
I,
becomes a
I
matter of
think
how we choose to interpret it.
I think it also is because we don't often look at the word the word Ada there. We might not even register that it's Ada.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank
by
you.
the way, if you look at the root of the word Ada, Judith, can I throw the question back at you? What root
Yes,
do
a
you think the word
witness.
Ada comes from?
Well, in any case, we see it in the large letters in the Shema.
That's true. But what does the word aid mean? So Ada is related to the word aid. And what does the word aid mean?
I thought it meant a witness.
It does, exactly. Exactly. It means witness. So that in a sense, that Ada, that community of 10 people are serving as a witness to God. So that's another level of understanding this. Anyway, let me get back into the lesson we're in right now. Okay. So
Yes.
here we go. All right. So we started here. We have Ulai yesh chamishim tzadikim. Perhaps there are 50 righteous people in the year, etc., etc. Okay. Velo tisa, and you will not spare lamakom, the place. Of course, he means all 5 places. Leman chamishim hatzadikim asher bekibor, on account of the 50 righteous people that are in its midst. Chalila lacha. This is the verse we're going to look at. Far be it for you, me'asota kadavar hazeh, from doing such a thing, lahamit tzadik im rasha, to kill a righteous person along with a wicked person, v'haya chatzadik harasha, because in that case, a righteous person is just like a wicked person, doesn't make any difference. And notice this repetition, chalila lacha, far be it from you. And this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful question, Hashofet kol haaretz, shall not the judge of the earth, lo yaseh mishpat, do justice? And that's the opening. And then we have Vayomer Hashem, and the Lord responds, shall not the judge of the earth do justice? That is a powerful, powerful statement. That if we accept God as the judge of the earth, then we understand that along with that goes the idea of divine justice. Now, here we are. Chalil Lacha. Darash Rabbi Abba Barkana. Rabbi Abba Barkana interpreted, "My dichtiv chalil lacha masot kadavar hazeh." What does it mean? What's the meaning of this term chalil lacha from performing such an act? Lahamit tzadik im rasha, to kill a righteous person along with a wicked one. And now he interprets it. Amar Avraham lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, said Abraham before the Holy One, blessed be He, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, chulin hu lacha. That's how he understands chalil lacha. It would be a profanation of you, right? It would be a profane act on your part. So we need to understand this term chulin. It is the opposite of kadosh, right? It's the opposite of sanctifying. And profane basically means non-sacred. But clearly we've gone beyond that. And it's interesting because we refer to foul language as profanity. And I think the reason is that there's an understanding that our ability to use language is such a gift and a unique quality of human beings. The ability to use language on the levels and the exalted ways in which we can, right? We know that language can be used in such a powerful and beautiful way, and that to use it for profanity is to desanctify that, to look at language as something sacred, something special, and not to profane it, right? So, it would be a profane act on your part to do such a thing, lahamit tzaddik im rasha, to kill a righteous person with a wicked person. So now we're going to take a look at Torah Temimah. And this, by the way, is from Avodah Zarah, the tractate Avodah Zarah, page 4a. Yitachen, it's possible that derives kvilat halashon chalila lecha, that the reason why Rabbi Abba Bar Kana, to be sure I've got the right person, right? Yes, Abba Bar Kana is doing this because of the repetition of that term chalila lecha. That's why he's going into such an explanation of this word. Okay. Here we go. So here we go. V'darish pam achat. And so he's going to say there must be some significance as to why it's mentioned twice. And that's why he gives an additional meaning to the fact that it's mentioned twice for one of those times. Pam achat. So he interprets one time, Elashon chulin. He says that this chalila lecha is related to a term chulin, meaning, profane. Al pimashe simu ba'agadot. It is based on what they concluded in Agadot, legendary material, ba'inyan zeh, in concerning this matter. Va'ata kadosh. There's a statement: "You are holy, u'ma'asecha kadoshim, and your actions are holy." And according to this, yechaven halashon chuli. And on this basis, this term profane is applicable. In other words, that we understand God not only to be holy, but that all the acts that God performs are holy. And for God to kill righteous people along with wicked people on account of their wickedness takes away from the divine sanctity. There's more to be said about this. And it's necessary to clarify. How is it possible to connect this particular, or to make this statement applicable? The fact that it is a profane act on you of your part, lahamit tzaddik im rasha, to kill the righteous along with the wicked. Im hama'amar. How do we satisfy? There are going to be two contradictory statements. And this is the contradictory statement. There's a statement that says, Kevan shinatan reshut lamashchit, that once permission is given to the destroyer, shuv eino mavchin bein tzaddik l'rasha, there's no distinction at that point. There's no distinction at that point between the righteous and the wicked. And that's a statement in Baba Kama, page 60b. So here's Abraham saying, how is it possible for this holy God not to make this distinction? And here we have in Baba Kama the fact that once the destructive forces go into effect in the way, in a capital D destructive forces, that then there is no distinction made between righteous people and wicked people, that both perish, both are subject to this destructive act. And that seems like a contradiction in terms. So how do we resolve this contradiction? Ki halo hakol b'hashgacha mina b'shamayim. And Torah Temimah adds, he says, right, everything nevertheless is under the supervision of heaven, meaning God is still responsible. God is still supervising, and if God gives the destroyer the ability not to make any distinctions, it's still God's responsibility, which is what Abraham is arguing about. V'tzarich lomar, and so we have to say, Tisha'at hadavar, right, that particular moment, that the moment of that particular occurrence, da'az nitan reshut lamashkin, that is to say, that at that point, permission is given to the destroyer, shani, it's exceptional. It's an exception to the rule. To us, because at that point, gadol yoter hakitrug, because at that point, and he's going to explain this very well, I think, he's going to say that the level of kitrug essentially a categor as a prosecuting attorney. In other words, when you're a prosecuting attorney, you look for every possible misdeed involved in that particular case. And we're talking about at this point the idea of prosecuting the case, of seeking anything that might have been an act, a sinful act on the part of people involved. Asher ein adam, and he says, and since there is no human being tzaddik ba'aretz, there's a statement that says ein adam tzaddik ba'aretz. There's no person who's totally righteous. That's the argument. Since no one is totally righteous that exists, asher lo yechta, who has not sinned in some way or another, there's no one who's perfect, who's perfectly righteous, lachin. And because at this particular point, we are looking for any minute aberration that might be going on, right? Lachin alul az lehitapes afilu al aveira kala. And that's why it is at that point likely, right, that any sin, even the slightest sin, even light translation, is seized on. Shebesha'at shalom, that in a normal time of peace, ma'avirin aleha, it gets overlooked. So in that particular dynamic, since there is no perfectly righteous person, at that point, the destroyer has the freedom to destroy. And when we're talking about tzaddik, we're saying relatively, that people who are righteous are relatively righteous. And we also say, and we had this before in one of our explanations, is that even someone who's wicked, it's a matter of relative wickedness, because just like there's no person who's perfectly righteous, there's no one who's perfectly wicked, right? Mussolini got the trains to run on time. That's the classic example. For al derech hadrash, right? And by means of this interpretation, yesh yashev, we can now resolve, right? Ha'inyan od befanim shonim, right? And we can actually resolve this in other various different kinds of ways. Aval ein tachlit chibur zeh, but it is not the intention of this composition, that is to say, this work that Torah Temimah is doing, the Torah Temimah's work, ledivrei drosh aruchot. He's not interested in going into very lengthy explanations. And you notice even his lengthy explanations, I could tell you, are pretty short compared to really major excursions on these particular subjects. So before we go on, please, if anybody wants to comment on this particular issue, I'm happy to take comments. Okay, I'm gonna go on. Okay. Let me make sure. All right. Yes, this is a beautiful, beautiful statement, and it basically confirms what I've said before to you. Right. Let's keep going on. Find the place. Vayomer Hashem, and so the Lord says to Abraham, Im emtsa bistom chamishim tzadikim. If I find in the city of Sodom, and of course he means all 5 cities, chamishim tzadikim, 50 righteous, betoch ha'ir, in the midst of the city, I will overlook the entire place on their account. In other words, for the sake of 50 righteous, God will not destroy these cities. Now, you may be wondering, why does it just refer to Sodom? Because Sodom is like the capital. And look, even in our own, in English, we may refer to Washington, a city, right? And because it's the capital city, we refer to Washington and actually are referring to the United States, the entire country. So it's a similar kind of usage of language in this particular case. Let's take a look at this one. As you can see, it's a very short comment ba'avuram, on their account. Melamed, this teaches you shahat tzadikim maginim la'olam, that righteous people protect the world. They're a shield to the world. And that's based on something that's said in Tractate Sanhedrin, page 99b. Torah Temimah. Mefaresh begamara kan, right? It's explained in the Gemara, in the Talmud here, the nafka mina bazeh, that we can conclude, we can deduce from this, through this, ki ela hatoanim, that people who argue, my inhulan, right, rabbanan, of what benefit for us are our rabbis. And basically the arguing is that what they're saying is because the rabbis and in their laws tend to go above and beyond the letter of the law in the Torah, right? As well as interpreting and bringing out inferences in the Torah. What good, what use are the rabbis, right? Hein bichlal apikorsen. To say such a thing is an apikoros. And apikoros, it comes obviously from, I believe, Greek or Latin Epicurean, but it doesn't mean that as far as real Epicureans. But what it's talking about, an apikoros, is someone who knows, who's knowledgeable about Judaism and denies God, denies God's righteousness, but even though they are knowledgeable, as opposed to an am haaretz. An am haaretz is someone who's ignorant. They don't know anything about Judaism, and they base their opinions based on their ignorance. But an epicurus is someone who has studied, who has learned, who knows, and at the same time denies the validity of Judaism, and in this case, the rabbis. Acharei, since shemafurash omer hakadosh baruch hu, because, and the reason they say this is because it states explicitly that God says, "V'nasati lachol hamakom ba'avoram," and I will forgive the entire place on their account. Hooray! And so, for this reason, the mahanu umahanu olam, that is to say, that people who, in fact, observe the rabbinic strictures, etc., it benefits them, and it also benefits the world. V'chein daiku, and likewise, they look very carefully into this, and they infer from it, right? Pasuk, right, and from another verse that says, "Im lo briti," if it were not for my covenant, yomam v'layla, day and night, kulkot shamayim, the laws of heaven, meaning nature v'aretz, of heaven and earth, the laws of heaven and earth, losh samti, I would not have placed. In other words, the world would get destroyed if it weren't for God's covenant, right? Day and night. And of course, we know that this term, Yomam Valayla, also has to do with, here we go, the Ka'e al Brit HaTorah. It has to do with the covenant of the Torah. And we know it says, V'yigitim Vahem Yomam Valayla, you shall meditate on them day and night. So that the fact that there's use of this phrase lets us know that this particular verse is referring to the study and application of the Torah. And keep going on. Hare de bishvil haTorah, and because indeed, on account of the Torah, mitkayem ha'olam, the world itself is endures. So I'm going to stop here for this morning, but I certainly want to leave room and time for some comments. So I'm going to stop the share right here, and I'm curious as to anything you have to say about this. David, you look like you have a question or a comment.
I do have a question. If no one is truly righteous and no one is truly wicked, is there a tipping point to 50 righteous people?
Yes, yes, it is. And I think that's just true in general if we look at ourselves. And I think it helps us not flagellate ourselves for not being perfect. Because I think you can wind up flagellating yourself so much that you wind up not doing better things. And to know that we don't have to be perfect, it's more a vector, it's more a direction. Life is dynamic. Life in itself is a story that's being told. Your life is a story. And it has more to do with the direction that you're facing and walking than how you actually are. In other words, are you better than you were 10 years ago? Are you wiser than you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago? That's the real issue. It's not that the expectation is that we're perfect, but what Torah Temimah was trying to do was explain these particular verses that seem to contradict each other. Please, if you want to follow up, feel free to do that. If you don't feel I've really addressed your issue.
Thank you.
You bet.
Uh,
Harlan.
When the world to come, only the righteous people go into the world to come?
That's a good question. So the question then depends on righteous, how righteous is defined. And again, if I'm defining it, if it's legitimate to say it has to do with the way in which a person is conducting their life, we know, according to that wonderful story about Hillel and the person who wanted to teach him the entire Torah while he stood on one foot, Hillel said to him, "What is hateful to you, don't do to your neighbor. The rest is commentary." So I would say essentially, and that's so interesting, that is the kernel of it all. That is the essence of it all. So that
Yeah.
even if you've never learned how to believe in God and you were never taught how to understand a divine, the divine transcendent creator, and you never came even close to doing that. Let's say perhaps you even denied it, but you nevertheless treated people according to that principle. I would say that is the tipping point. Not to treat people the way you would not want to be treated yourself. Okay? Now, I'm just saying that on the basis of what I think is logical and what I've learned. Obviously, God will be the judge. And listen, we all have different backgrounds. We all come from different cultures. We all come from different families. We all are, who we are is based on all those various factors. And I'm certain that God takes that into account.
Yep.
But I also don't believe you must be Jewish. I don't believe you must be Jewish to enter heaven, to be immortal. I just don't believe it. I believe that any righteous person is going to inherit immortality. And that's also going to depend on their background, what opportunities they had, etc. That God is the only true judge. I'm not. Lanny, did you want to say something?
No, not really. I agree with that, Mordechai. I don't think, first of all, if you believe in Gilgal HaNefesh,
Yes.
Do we always come back as a Jew?
Right. Exactly. You can come back as a fish. You can come back as a leaf on a tree.
No, I don't think that occurs.
Yeah.
But I think we come back as humans, but we may not come back in the same,
right.
religion.
Is he saying a reincarnation?
There is a belief in reincarnation, Harlan. I don't know that I go as far as the Buddhists on that one, but they absolutely, within Judaism, Jewish mysticism, there is a belief in reincarnation. Lanny, the reason why I'd say you could come back as a fish and you can come back as a leaf on a tree is because there is life in every one of those things. And in my humble opinion, there is a divine spark in every single one of those things. And when you think of the variety and the volume of all these things that the world is filled with, including minerals, because even minerals, you understand, are created by the divine, even though they may not have the same life force that vegetables have, or certainly that animals do.
I agree with that, Mordechai.
Yeah.
However, I think that once you reach a certain level of consciousness, you don't go backward.
It's possible, but I think it also is going to depend on what kind of life you lived and how you might function in those various ways. Lanny, hopefully we'll have a conversation about this when we actually experience it. And honestly, I'm hoping to move beyond. I sometimes I joke with people and say my conception of heaven is being in the base section of the divine chorus. I'll be singing alongside David Sklar if I make it up to his level.
Oh, wow. You're in big trouble.
Okay.
Not really.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
All right.
So nice having you. I'm going to
Goodbye.
stop the recording. Okay.